The magicians, the man who wouldn't stay dead. Fred Alexander woke up cold, naked, and afraid in a dark cupboard one day after he'd been to the pub. He thought he must have been really drunk to be like this, and wondered if he'd done something stupid. Fred, being an enchanter, tried to leave with magic without opening the door. Being naked, it would look a little odd to just stroll outside. Realizing someone had cast an entrapment spell on it. It wasn't one of his kind, the magicians, it was more likely a human. It was clumsy but effective. Fred realized it was a trap, and he couldn't escape. Fred saw blood on the floor, his blood. He was confused and scared. Fred looked at himself, he was unharmed. He thought he must have died, as his body healed itself when he died, and it returned to life, unlike the rest of his kind. A man opened the door of the cupboard expecting to see a corpse. Outside there was a table of tools to cut up the corpse and dispose of him. The man looked at him and was confused and angry. "You're not dead?" the man said. "No," said Fred nervously. The man stabbed Fred in the heart, and the bleeding Fred dropped to the ground dead. The killer closed the door to let him bleed out as he washed his bloody hands and the knife. Then got a coffee and sat for a while. The killer came back, sure his victim would have bled out and wouldn't make too much of a mess. He opened the door, looking at the floor to see a lot of blood and his victim's feet. "What?" the killer said, looking up. "I'm still here," Fred said nervously. "What are you?" asked the killer. "Not dead," Fred said nervously. "I'll fix that," said the man, killing Fred again, stabbing him in the guts, leaving him to die again, closing the door. Coming back a while later with an axe. Talking to the door, "If you're not dead you'll want to be," said the killer to the door before he opened it, expecting to find his victim alive again. He looked inside and found Fred lying bled to death on the floor, dead. So the killer picked up the tall, slippery, bloody corpse out of the cupboard with effort. He put him on the table and prepared to cut up the body. The killer raised the axe over the neck of the corpse. It didn't hit the corpse's neck, it hit something else. The confused killer tried again, but it stopped again. The killer suspected something fishy. "What's going on here?" said the killer, frustrated. The thing that stopped the axe appeared. It was made of metal and had a wooden handle. "What?" said the shocked killer, seeing a stranger. "Are you here to take him?" "No," said the stranger. "Why did you kill him?" "He was the leader of an alien hive," said the killer. "Leader of what? Does that look like a queen to you?" said the disgusted stranger, pointing at the corpse. The killer looked at the blood-stained body. It was obviously male. "No," said the killer. "He was a king and emperor to the hive." "Isn't that the same thing?" "An emperor and king," said the stranger pedantically. "Not in his case, they called him the emperor of the universe and the king of the earth," said the killer. "Oh, that's who he was?" "Was he?" the stranger asked. "Yes," said the killer. "Why are you protecting him?" The stranger looked at the dead man. "Maybe I knew him in another life?" said the stranger. "Who are you?" asked the killer curiously. "I'd rather not say," said the stranger. "Maybe I'm his bodyguard." "What use is a dead alien? Let me dispose of him," said the killer. "I'd rather you'd not hack him up," said the stranger. "Misguided loyalty," said the killer. "No," said the stranger, who disliked zealots like this killer, who he was tired of and knew he knew too much to live. But the stranger could not do anything yet. If he removed his weapon, Fred would lose his head. They knew they were in a stalemate. If one of them removed their weapon, the other would strike. They stood like that for an hour chatting, neither flinching, waiting for the other to grow tired to no avail. 5 hours passed, and they grew tired. They were hardly able to keep their weapons' arms still. They grew shaky. On the 6th hour the killer grew drowsy and dropped his axe as he dozed off. The stranger walked over to the dead man, touched his chest, and melted into the corpse, which promptly healed and came back to life. Fred sat up, disoriented, and saw the killer, knowing sadly he must die. No one could know about his afflictions of having a grim reaper, the stranger, as a soul, and his dying and coming back to life would bring down his empire. A dead man or a living dead man could not be emperor. Fred sadly slew his killer and dismembered him with the skill of a former coroner, which he was, and disposed of the body. Pray not to get caught as a killer and the disposing of the body. He wasn't, and told no one of the kidnapping and killing.